Alright guys, we're working on a Dodge Ram here. I think this was a 09, 4.7 liter. We're going to work on changing this rusty oil pan and gasket. Nice little oil leak. I've already drained the oil, 13 millimeter on this drain plug. And first thing I'm going to do is get these bell housing adapter bolts off. You got 6 of them. I've already got them loose. So we're going to take that big plate off first. Alright guys, I think I said 6 bolts, 8 bolts in that cover. Now we can see our 10 millimeter bolts on the oil pan there. They're exposed. Transmission lines are in the way. There's a little black clip right there sitting on one of the oil pan bolts. So you just pop that off and you can move these trans lines to the side so you got access to them bolts. Alright, so now we've got another little black clip there holding a wiring harness on. It won't focus. There we go. We'll pop that off, get the wiring harness out of the way, and start working these 10 millimeter bolts off all the way around. Alright, we got all the bolts out. Wasn't too hard at all. I used a extender with a little wobble socket on the end. Deep well for those 2 with the stud on the 10 millimeter. Wasn't too bad at all. Got them all out. We're gonna put a little screwdriver right here and see if this pan will pop off. I didn't think so. I thought I'd give it a shot though. Make sure all our bolts are out. They are. So now we gotta get this pan to come off. We'll give it a couple whacks. Try to pry it off here and there. Get a little pry bar right here. I'm replacing the pan so I'm not worried about hurting it. Just give her a couple pries. See if it'll break free. Doesn't look like it. Alright, I'm gonna get the pan off. Can't do it with one hand. Probably give it a few taps with the screwdriver to get that gasket to start separating. Just don't score your mating surface trying to get this pan to crack free. Alright, we got our oil pan dropped. So this was about the toughest oil pan gasket I've ever had to break free. It was just sucked right together. So you got to get the oil pan gasket to stay up there and the pan to fall down. See, the gasket's still there. So I had to take screwdrivers, putty knives, everything, and just get them underneath in between the pan and the gasket because we don't want to hurt the block. And just work my way around it. It was really stuck on there, and that's just what these motors do. All right, we can't go down any further. We got this bar in the way, 18 millimeter on these. So we're gonna go ahead and zip these 4 bolts out and get that out of the way. All right, we got the bar out of the way, that cross member. Bolts were super duper rusty, but they came out just fine with my impact. Now you still don't have enough room to get the oil pan out. That's because you got to drop the axle. All right, we got 3 bolts up here. There, they go through there on the other side. And we also got a couple of bolts up here on the front side. So we got to get this axle to lower down. Alright guys, I got a little jack and wood to support my axle. I don't recommend you do that. Well, we got those 3 bolts out from there. Those nuts are welded on this side. They came out pretty easily from that side. No issues. And then we've got right up there, I've taken out a bolt. You can, there it is, you can see the bolt hole. I cracked it free with 18 millimeter, 1/2 inch ratchet. You can get it right up in through here. And then it was so rusty, it took a lot to crack it free. Then after you crack it free, you can actually get a socket on there with a universal swivel socket and zip it out. Let me see my combo here. See, I had a couple of wobble extenders and let me see, where did that guy go? I don't know where the wobble extender went. Got a couple more in my tray here. One of these guys wobbles at the end. Allows you to get up in there. So yeah, that worked. Now we got one more bolt to take off. I took those two out. I don't know if I needed to, but I did. We got one more right there. Right there. Holding that axle in. So you can get this pan to slide over and out of the way, and it gives you a lot more room. I tried cracking it free and I was having trouble. So it might be tough to get a wrench on there and crack it free. But now with the pan slid in over this way, I got a lot more room to work with. All right, we got this axle hanging down. It's kind of resting right here. Kind of like swiveled a little bit as it came down, that's fine. And this pan just started to come out. So we can actually just grab it out of there now. See, you don't need the axle to come down very far at all to get to this. But there we are, we have our gasket here. And it's bolted on. I believe those are 13mm bolts right there. So we've got, what we got here? We got one bolt here that's holding down the pickup tube. And we got two bolts here holding down the pickup tube. So yeah, there we go. Oil pan's out of there. And to get that front bolt off the axle, what came in really handy was this stubby little swiveling ratchet. See, the head can bend. Well, after I cracked it free and it was coming out pretty easily, relieved the pressure just a hair with that jack with the wood. It wasn't coming out with my fingers, but with this fine-tooth stubby ratchet, I was able to get a real good angle on it and get it out of there pretty easily. All right, we got our pickup tube off there. Here's the three obvious 13mm right there. And then you got one more 13mm right where the pickup tube meets the oil pump. There's an O-ring there. You have to replace that O-ring, all right? So let's get everything cleaned up. Give that there a bath in the old parts washer. This gasket is still seized to the block. So we need to work around and get that gasket out of there. And then clean up the surface where the gasket mates with the block. So we're gonna get this out of here, the gasket, and then clean up the mating surface. All right, here we go, guys. I cleaned up my gasket surface on the oil pan. Used my favorite little gasket remover disc. For the most part, you can get up in there pretty good. It's all cleaned up, sprayed brake cleaner on a rag, you know, wiped it all down, you know, get that mating surface free of oil. Now we got our oil pan gasket here with windage tray. There's the part number, Felpro. It comes with that O-ring for the oil pickup tube. So we're gonna get this put up there and the oil pickup tube installed back in its home, which is right up underneath there. There it is, you can see it. Make sure that's clean. And yeah, just bolt these 13mm bolts up there. Pickup tube and gasket. Let's get her reinstalled. All right, we got our pickup tube up in there. What you want to do is just put like 4 bolts in loosely, just with your fingers on to keep the gasket up. And you can see I don't have the nuts on the oil pickup tube yet. The most important thing is making sure that O-ring is properly installed, the pickup tube, and you tighten that bolt down and everything's nice and flush. That's the most important thing. So, got that torqued down. I'm sure there's a torque spec on it. You might want to check it out. So now, I can put my 3 bolts in, my 13mm on the pickup tube to the gasket, and then take those 4 bolts off I put on the oil pan bolts onto the gasket. And that's how you install the pickup tube and gasket. So we'll get those 3 bolts on, take those 4 bolts out that are holding the gasket up, because those 3 nuts will hold that gasket up. And then it's time to wiggle the pan up in there. Alright guys, here's what I did. Put the oil pan up in there. Had a buddy just hold it up so that it didn't fall down. And then I just jacked up on the axle a little bit. Doesn't take much. And lined up 1 bolt here. Right there. Just 1. Real loosely, couple threads. And then we come around to the front because we got the 2 pane bolts. The only 2 bolts that are really tough to get to. So after we jacked it up, the pan will stay up in there. Got my pan pushed over to the side so that I can get a ratchet and socket on that bolt. I jacked up the axle just a little too much, so I had to break it down, and I had him just push up ever so slightly right there where those 2 empty bolts are, and it lined up. I was able to put my fingertips on it and get it started, and then put the ratchet on it to get it tightened down. So what we're gonna do is start putting all these bolts back in. Before I bolt the pan up, I'm gonna get that bolt tight up there, and I'm also gonna come down and get the other upper axle bolt in from this way. I'm gonna shift the pan over so that I can see it from this way, and I'll be able to get it with the long extender setup with the swivel sockets and the wobble end extenders. We'll be able to get to it, and that one won't be too tough to do. But this one, it really helps to have a fine tooth 1/2-inch drive ratchet like that one, little stubby. It's going in pretty easy, easier than it came out. All right, before tightening those 2 bolts at the top of the axle, make sure you got these 3 lined up, and those 2 lined up over there before you do the final torque. This one, the thread was damaged right here, so I put a smaller bolt through, just the hair smaller bolt, next size down with a nut on the end. The other one, no problems going in, got it tight, the one in the front up there. So now we got those 2 tightened down, these 3 tightened down, and just finished tightening down those 2 up there. So now it's time to get our oil pan all bolted up. Those, we're gonna do a crisscross pattern on the oil pan, and it's 130 inch-pounds for your torque on that oil pan, on the oil pan bolts. All right guys, time to wrap the video up. I got her all done and on the ground. So I tightened those oil pan bolts down to 130 inch-pounds, crisscross pattern, put the trans line holder back up, the wiring harness holder back up. It goes on those, the 2 bolts will have like a little stud on them. Make sure you put those in the right spot. And then you can hook your little wiring harness and trans line holder up, just clips right on. And with that oil pan bolted on, we put the cross member back on. That's pretty self-explanatory. One side has a little dip in it. That side goes in the axle side. Or if you flip-flop it the other way, it won't fit, right? So tightened everything up. Let's see, is there anything I'm missing here? Everything got put back together. Oh, we put that bell housing cover back on, 15mm bolts, 8 of them. Easy peasy, just slid it right on there and got the bolts tight. Then oil change, got a new oil filter, and 6 quarts of oil is what this takes for an 09 4.7 liter. And this job's gonna be pretty much the same for the, what is that, the 5.7 or 5.2, whatever. I can't think right now, I'm tired, it's late, it's dark out. Anyways, yeah, 6 quarts of oil for the 4.7. Fill her up with oil, start her up, good to go.